Então, é... eu tive alguns probleminhas. Bruh. My aim isn't that bad. Já esqueci como é que sai dali.
サイキ、洞窟の土を持ってきたよ。サイキが言ってた土ってこれのことかな。さっき小さい頃はって言っていたけど、今のサイキはどうなのかな。
すごくわ
well can we link up this design philosophy to these stands?
私が前に立
For a
つ
concept like this, our first character we'll be using will help get the idea across. So first, let's start off with Hamid Abdul. Well, what would you say
法制軍同盟の死亡者を見つけたよ
Avdol tells
グ
us
レート
about
グロ
how
ーリーの爆
he
発を
had
阻止しろって依頼だけど
but
先に死亡
understood
者を倒せば事はスムーズに
So
運ぶんじゃ
his
ない
placement on the team is essentially him being a whole person for the most part. And he's someone of reason and strength. A pillar of the team, but goes unnoticed. And it's fine there because his whole
終わらせてあげる
the idea is essentially being able to put your fears to the side and take on a large obstacle. Yeah.
てい
Now, we
涙玉
have to pull
無事に
from
解除
his
したぜ
stand magician's
逃
red.
げるん
Its
だ
power
よ
is pyrokinesis, the ability to generate and control fire. Now, my line of thinking for the changes is that even if Avdol were to get pierced by the arrow, he's not a character who Araki has stand in the forefront. Only Jotaro, Polnareff to an extent, and Joseph when he
こ
was
れで
young
おしまい
have that same placement. So if he were to get a power, it wouldn't have a sole 1v1 ability, but more so be something that he can support himself largely as his own person, but also have the ability to support everyone else. Well, firstly, with his design, it's a bit hard to think of because Chariot Requiem's design had been based on the origins of Requiem, and Gold Experience Requiem's case had been like an evolution in all merits. So with Magician's Red, I had been thinking about connecting it to its tarot card by retaining that.
悪い知らせと悪い知らせと言えるかもしれない知らせがあります。
先に一番悪い方から聞くわ。
パーガトリー島に駐屯させた分隊が3日間周辺を捜索したのですが、ナンバーゼロと一緒にいた少年の行方はつかめませんでした。彼が崖から転落した後、即座に周辺海域の捜査を開始しております。したがって理論上、捜査範囲外のエリアまで漂流することは生死に関わらず考えられません。残る可能性としては、何者かが彼を、
引き続き周辺の島の住民を調査しなさい。一人の容疑者も目撃者も見逃さないように。
すでにそのように手配済みです。さらに探索範囲も拡大しているのでご安心を。ですが僭越ながら、もし彼をレゾナンスの所有者を手中に収めたとして、いかがなさるおつもりですか？レゾナンスの力が完全に覚醒すれば、あらゆるムクロに対して干渉が可能となります。ですが、その力を震えるかどうかは、持ち主の意志にかかっているんですよ。言い換えれば、ご本人が自ら望まぬ限り、帝国にとってその力は無用どころか、かえって災いを招く火種となるでしょう。あの時のようにね。
ならば、あの時と同じように始末すればいいだけのこと。どんな手段を使おうと、この力が帝国以外へ渡るのは許されないわ。特にエリュシオンにはね。それでもう一つの報告は？
別途で私が調査命令を受けた件についてです。近くの無人島を捜索中に、あの島から船で逃げてきた村人と遭遇しまして、いろいろお話を伺ったんですが、少し興味深いことに気がつきまして、なんと表現すべきでしょうか。いつも味わっている濃厚なスープを一さじすくったら、スプーンの美しい銀色が輝きを失い、恐ろしき漆黒に変わったかのような。
要点だけ話しなさい。
ああ、 はいはい。興味深いこととは時間差ですね。村人の話ではパーガトリー島に生息する永獣は山をテリトリーにしており、人間を攻撃することはほとんどなかったそうです。それが私たちが到着する2日前から突然村を襲ってきたとか。
2日前ね。
お察しの通り、偶然にしては不自然すぎますよね。突然の計画変更があったせいで我々の上陸予定もちょうど2日遅れました。永獣を操って攻撃をけしかけられるのは今のところフォーセイ君同盟だけでしょうか。
同盟の仕業であろうがなかろうが、第13軍団に害悪な不純物が紛れ込んでいそうね。月日を重ねてまた害虫が湧いたのかしら。徹底的に踏み潰しましょう。
約束の時間にはまだ早い。
地面にあるのはアウトサイダーが仕掛けたトラップか。なかなかのものだ。アウトサイダーにこんな才能があるなんて意外だな。どうしたの？
調整中の物音でこいつらを引き寄せちまった。手を貸してくれよ相棒。
アウトサイダーの自業自得じゃ。まあいいか。
や
いい感じだ。この数日であっという間に腕を上げたな。だが学ぶべきことはまだ当然だ。俺が
行こう。
厄介な長い付き合いなのにまた自己紹介か。はいはい。ノクトボイジャーのアウトサイダー。職業は危なっかしいチームの引率者ってところか。
Cool.
厄介なもんに劣化したな。今まで通り半分ずつでどうだ。あんまり気にしないでくれよ。照れる。いや、なんでもねえよ。あんまり気にしないでくれよ。照れる。いや、なんでもねえよ。
行こう。
厄介なもんに劣化したな。
行こ
厄介なもんに
う。行こう。
厄介なもんに劣化したな。今まで通り半分ずつでどうだ。
Red cloth gown thing, and I'm not gonna pretend I know what it is, but it seems like a
さっさと
good
片付けよう
little
ぜ。
character aspect.
まだ火事が残ってるし。
Alongside that, I think we're going to continue this trend of evolution, and I would have Magician's Red give up its form and be more so like an ongoing flame form, similar to the Phoenix Force from Marvel Comics. It's also helped that, you know, this is a Phoenix-based character. One of the things that I've also thought of for Magician's Red is adding wings to the outsides of his arms, which would be made of glowing gold flames and, you know, energy particles all around him. His power, though, well, what I had settled with is moving pyrokinesis over to
別の
a
浄化
higher
剤の保
echelon,
管場所を発
higher end
見
of
目
it,
印も
over
つけてお
to
いたよ。
energy manipulation itself. This form of energy manipulation would be able to do something like overloading the human body with energy because, you know, he
浄
has
化剤が手に入ったね。
he could take it
持
away.
ちこたえられる時間が少し
All
伸
the
びたは
put
ず。
it on.
ま
Or
だ
well, you
浄
know,
化剤の保管場所が残ってないか探してみるよ。
now my reasoning has been this. Abdul becoming energy because he's becoming the power that he has. That's the thing. We all have power in us all. Using it is a case-by-case basis. You know, when you want to use it, it's like I'm choosing when to use the power that I have. But when you become the power that you have, you become all that you're supposed to be, if that makes any sense. As for how he'd be able to apply this power in his scenario after getting pierced, he'd be able to make Iggy
浄
and
化剤
Porter
の保
fly
管場
off.
所。見つけた。
But for what he could do against Vanilla Ice, well, I'd say that he can't stop Cream's ability. That's not true. It's a portal to nothing, you know, so there's no actual way he'd be able to just prevent this entirely. But what Abdul can do is that he'd be able to move his friends away and he'd shine when Vanilla Ice is actually out. Because once out,
別の浄化剤の保管場所を発
he'd be able to
見。
still rob
目印
Vanilla
も
Ice
つけ
of
て
his
おいた
brain
よ。
activity. And if we're going for a more artful fight, something he could do is
使い方次第で化ける
spawn
ぜ
fires within Vanilla Ice's body so that even when he tries to hide in Green, he burns eternally. Now, one of the things that I actually thought about was how in this hide within Vanilla Ice's body once he exposes himself.
消火剤の保管場所
So once he hides
見つけた
in Cream,
私
and he's
で
just
も
full
す
on
ごいでしょ
Abdo shows up in his hidden round, sort of like how spoiler had in the One Guy
悪霊終わりだそろそろ本気で行く
part
ぜ
3, part 5 video, and a little bit part 6. So I don't want to ruin the experience. Now, as for the there's going to be talk about the addition to the name, but I want to save it at the end because it helps with the Next up, we're going over to the corner. See, I had been thinking about how I would go about this, but because everything wrapped up in his favor a lot of the time, I want to spin this over to him. As he's still a Stardust Crusaders until death. So, what would Corner's character arc be in win? I'd say it's a bit similar how
最後の光景を
Corner
しっかり目に焼き付ける
but understands that he needs to be stopped at the top. Considering how much of a force Diablo has been, it's been a lot better. A lot of enemies who also happen to be evil leaning, they're going to be around the corner can't just happen. Corner has to empower the people on his side in the best way possible. We see what happens with Chariot Requiem Berserker, but if Corner had been able to have his power that was relatively strong and really resolved, or how would that function? Well, Diavolo had beat out all of his enemies due to his powerful ability and immense strength. But Chariot Requiem had the ability to stop souls, so let's see. If he had the choice to stop souls,
そろそろ
how
本
would
気で行くぜ
that have gone? Diavolo's soul being transferred would mean he's still keeping Crimson Barriers. Maybe that wasn't the move, right? You can't just move Diavolo over to, let's say, Coco Jumbo, because like, oh, he still has the skin, so they still get beat out and he's working. Maybe the most
最後の
ideal
光景を
situation
しっかり目に焼き
Corner
付ける
being able to transfer his soul into a body that already exists. I honestly am thinking that the best case scenario would be that Corner's body doesn't matter. But Corner can keep moving as his stand would be attached to his body whenever he's doing this all. So with that, he'd be able to be present in, let's say, Diablo's body. Let's just be share a record. But let's say he's moved on into Diablo's body. Happens it while he's still there. If that was the case, it would be a battle of mind and soul. Well, something along those lines. Because if Chariot Requiem played out the way that it did, and you could just swap souls, not doing much really, could unless you could just send Diablo straight to not the focus. I think that he'd have to inhabit Diablo's body and try to kill the body while he's in. Then move to something else once the damage is done. Essentially, this is sort of like Ginyu's body change from Dragon Ball without moving the consciousness somewhere else. That's my idea. He'd just be able to be present in Diablo's body and be able to take care of himself. Because he lost the battle of bodies, but now it's a war of wits and soul. I'd add that's part of it. War of wits and soul. Porter's ability to shed his body like Silver Chariot shedding his armor, you know, that's a whole thing. And continuously transfer his stand and soul into other bodies, even if someone is already inhabited. That could be moving on to Iggy. Now Iggy's character won't tell you the most that See, Iggy as a powerful stand,
悪霊終わりだそろそろ本気で行くぜ
he lived a life of peace and selfishness for the most part. He had also been a more Louisiana dog. He prioritized himself more than anything. And I do understand, you know, again, this is a dog. We can characterize it. Look, I understand that in normal cases, it's easy to pull this out of context. But Araki chews have human thoughts, and they're translated into human speech. After all of it, he sees how many times they do a way to save each other when danger appears out of nowhere. So even when he has no strength to save himself, he uses all of it to muster up to save the world. Even with the life that he lived, he used it to finally be someone who helps in protecting the world. Realistically speaking, everybody here is like, he needs help to just human safety. That means a lot. Now, his power phantasmagoric sand. If we were to apply this philosophy to a dire situation, here's how I think it works. Originally, the idea that I had was power redistribution. In the way that it's like, I guess, undermining with the concept. You know, one grain of sand isn't something, but it's a lot. Essentially that idea. But I scaled it down further to mineral redistribution. Not enough to just pull out all the calcium out of your body, throw it somewhere else, make it pieces like a Nature Valley granola bar, but more so move all the calcium somewhere else in your body. So you achieve a similar result. The reason for it is that I want to follow in line of how Iggy had dictated his life. And alongside that, I want to keep the, I guess more so the symbol of sand going here. So he redirects power in the same way that the path of his life had been redirected. Now, he redistributes his power in a different area. As for the design, I had been thinking about making it lean more into the animal aspect to an extent. Now, foxes throughout history have had the idea of them being tricksters attached to their name for a very long amount of time, so forming the fool's face to be of like a fox in a sense, like it is maybe a more canine-centric animal, but retaining, you know, the metal aspect, maybe attaching a face structure or the bones of a fox on top of the metal. And as for the eyes, those smiling Joker eyes. Now with the tarot card, the Fool, I've been thinking of this stand to be some sort of like Gear 5 Part 3. Not because of power, but just sheer laughter and trickery. The issue I came into this was retaining the four-leggedness and adapting the sense of keep it as is. Human Joker aspect about it in its actions. Now the Abdul and Abyys interpretation has been more about the journey that saved that. But Vanilla Ice, he represents sacrifice. You have to consider that his character began with him chopping off his own head. Vanilla Ice shows off that he's ready to die for his cause more than any other movie. A lot of them, you know, they think that, you know, they're just pretty strong, you know, they probably didn't think too much of the Stardust Crusaders to begin with. They probably and have beat them pretty outright. So I wouldn't put them in the same category as the guys. I think also loves you more than anyone else pretty much ever seen. Now when it comes to the fight though, Vanilla Ice doesn't do anything besides let me go down to the bottom, you know? Because how much more would he be able to sacrifice? He already killed and got the benefit of some character generation. And when it came to being able to corner it, they didn't get some sort of extra benefit on top of the sacrifice. That's another tragedy of the Crusaders, because their sacrifices were to just take out the obstacle that is Vanilla Ice. they didn't get some sort of extra benefits that help them in the same way that, you know, supporting evil would do. But it's just like, you know, defeating the evil.
あとは俺が
That's
片
the
付けておく
benefit. So I think I'm fine with the
そっちは回収
abilities
できるものがないか
as
探
is.
してな
Because I don't think I need Iggy to just redistribute like life forces and just, oh no, I'm dead, you know, especially considering that his ability would already negate something like durability. So I think that he's pretty strong in his own merit. And I didn't get to mention this for the forms of Berserker, because that's the thing I also wanted to add in, the idea of not just what would this thing, like, you know, quote,
厄介なもんにでっかしたな
be.
今
Because
ま
I
で通
want
り
to add in the
半
idea
分
of,
ず
you
つ
know,
でどう
what
だ
if they did.
Opa, boa tarde. Opa, é 6562, mas eu já vou indo buscar. Certo, certo, obrigado, até já. I accidentally put barbecue sauce on my ice cream.
Did lose their body, but the stand is still pierced. You know that changes up a lot because I think that Avdol's spirit, with the sake of Magician's Red, would still be guided pretty well in its own mentality, even if it was a sort of distorted, but it would probably just focus more on protecting Polnareff and Iggy,
グレートグローリーの爆発を阻止しろって依頼だけど、先に死亡者を倒せば元はスムーズに運ぶんじゃないか。
What I was thinking of is that if this had to have happened in the story, and it had a sense of like, yeah, sure, Vanilla Ice gets beat, but this is like the full Requiem, so it would probably be like.
グレートグローリーの起爆装置が吹き出しになったみたい。早く破壊しないとだね。まったく。私たちが爆弾を仕掛けたお前してあげる。
Character arc just accept because you know this is what life is now. That's a cool idea that I have. Now we're moving on to now Joseph, you know the guy. He's lived such a long and strong life, and part 3 to him is in the similar order from part 5. Notice I did that for both of them. Oh as for his character arc, I'd say he's everyone here, as wild as it is. But that's what happens when you have a character for as long as he was around for. Because he was able to build so much of it. For example, I'm not stronger than you, I need to be stopped at all costs. And being the guidance for those younger and helping take out a common foe. That's him with Avdol and Dio, but that's also like Polnareff with Diavolo too. There's also a certain someone in Stone Ocean who also had did this. And they're like, oh, okay, I'm losing. We need to pass this on to the youth and all that so that they can do it better than us. But that's a lot of what the Stardust Crusaders is about. That's kind of like the whole thing. And then there's another point. I've lived a life of selfishness and hedonism. I've also been a Weasley guy who prioritized my life. His young Joseph phase kind of fell in line with Iggy, but like Iggy, when it came to people he loved or people coming into contact with evil, they both thought that someone had to be the one to help protect them, and it was those two characters. Like it's Joseph and Iggy. They're like, okay, we have to be the ones to save others when no one else is there. So because of this, what would this mean for Joseph's abilities, considering he's a lot like the people around him? Well, let's play more into his tarot card. And Purple's made abilities divination by using any
グレートグローリーの爆発を阻止しろって依頼だけど、先に死亡者を倒す。
But since Hermit Purple is connected to Hamon, and a better output or control of Hamon would lean more to the psychic powers of being able to see things to the future. I want to play it back and go focus more on the stand and have it play more into telepathy and the divination area. Alongside that, we're going to use this tarot card. Now, the Hermit is part of introspection. So his new form, which is a completion, should be around self-discovery and on his purpose. So since he's the one is meant to pass on information and knowledge to others, we're going to make that the entire case. The ability, we can actually call it something. I thought of a name is, the Hermit's Vision. Its power being able to absorb the knowledge and memories from someone and then send it to others or absorb it, for yourself. So, for example, if power being able to absorb the knowledge and memories from someone and then send it to others or absorb it, for yourself. So, for example, if it's Joseph with Jotaro, he could pull Dio's memories and of him learning the stand and all that, and he could go on to apply that to Jotaro's mind so he sees what he's working with. Not knowing that, Jotaro has the potential to stop time, but more so just telling him like, yo, the whole shebang, like this guy stops time. You gotta see what the hell we're working with, And if Jotaro ever wanted to know about what happened to Kakyoin, Joseph has the ability to take what he saw and copy it into Jotaro's mind. But if it did end up, plaguing him, like it's just like a terrible memory, Joseph doesn't have the ability to remove the memory. All he can do is copy memories and knowledge to other places, but he can't delete it once it's there. It's like an email, I guess. It's up to that person to forget it. Also, one thing that I thought about that he could be able to do, he could double up. He could double up if need be. So, for example, with Dio, he can make him experience his entire life like again through these flashbacks. I'm just not sure about on the timing, of like how fast can this be possible and how fast he can act and all that. Because, if I made it into like an instant, then I've essentially made Joseph stand into Satoru Gojo's Domain Expansion Infinite Void. That doesn't sound that bad, but it seems pretty wild for even this, like this Beetle Arrow Requiem stand type deal. But it would be really funny. And also, Gold Experience would seem still more broken compared, so I guess we're working with a good amount. As for the design, I love the idea that Hermit Purple, actually turns into a hermit covered in these purple thorns. And the world itself is the thorns too, but you can't see its face. But, it would be a cool thing. Once the power is being used on whoever it is, they see the face of whoever's information that they're getting. So in the case of Dio, he'd look at the hermit, and under the cloth, he'd end up seeing himself. Sort of like the first fight between I think Dio experiences life. There would probably, I don't know, I feel like he might experience ego death, like to an extent, at least, right? Because all of that, let's say if it's like if we had him 100 years of being underwater, because I don't think you can look at all that's happened and still feel great about yourself too, considering how many times just things didn't go in his favor. He lost a lot and he just kept losing. So he can't do anything about zero stopping time, unfortunately, but he can do his job really well. And I'd say that considering this standard in the scene. I give him this power. It's just like, it's just not good. And in his berserk form, unfortunately, I feel as though the only person that could just be walking around and just switching role break because I'm popular. It seems kind of crazy. Like, know this person's entire life. Remember that it's gonna work completely bonkers and it's really that is crazily unfortunate idea. I think that'd be terrifying. Which is kind of why I think this is a good point. Now we're over to Hierophant Green Stand user Noriaki Kakyoin. Now, when it comes down to Kakyoin, I'm not gonna lie, I actually had trouble here considering that his moment against Dio is actually supposed to be the one where he gets pierced. But Dio is attacking him within stop time, and I had at least some space for everyone else, you know, I guess except Joseph. This one, it's just like, okay, this would be the key point. I just think that against Dio, we're definitely going to be seeing a Berserk version of Hierophant Green Requiem. But I guess I'm fine with working with it as is. So, first, what's Kakyoin's character? Well, it's been straightforward. Let's be honest here. It just has been, because we saw what he's been working with those flashbacks in that fight. Kakyoin had lived a lonely life because of his unique experience of being a stand user at such a young age. And it's not that anyone didn't like him. It's that he made himself essentially unapproachable because no one could see Hierophant Green, so he felt that no one could possibly relate to him. And it's an interesting point because stands are a reflection of your soul, so maybe in some sort of weird cosmic way, he knew that the human part of him is truly only a part that people can know, and his soul shows, but it can't show to others in the way that he would want to. Now, with the Stars Crusaders, he's surrounded with like a bunch of others, you know? So maybe just the fact that he's in the group, you know, that's reason enough. That's you solve the character. But working towards defeating Dio is what they all have in common, so we kind of have to retain that idea too. In a non-berserk way, I thought about having Hierophant Green's tentacles and his Emerald Splash attack retain as is despite space-time, because his power is just at this point. He's whole now, and I think one of the most wild things I can do here is actually just have his power still retained despite all these other means. Because imagine this, right? Kakyoin uses Emerald Splash, but a Portal character uses their portal to redirect it. Haha, I am now attacking you, Noriaki Kakyoin. But imagine this, instead of it actually being redirected, the Emerald Splash stays the course and continues to pass. His power is absolute and will continue despite everything. That would have been good if that were to happen, you know, while Dio is stopping time and the little shine. Oh man, I'm Dio and I can't see because the arrow is shining so brightly. But, you know, that would be like if Diavolo and Polnareff, you know, that's exactly how that went. And Diavolo got his shot off regardless, despite the shining. So Kakyoin's here. Well, what's gonna happen if he dies and Hierophant Green continues without a body? Well, Hierophant Green, I feel as though this ability still, it should still be absolute, you know, but it's just going to go on and on. That's not going to mean, you know, the body of the stand's invincible. It's just going to mean that, you know, when it attacks, it's going to keep attacking, and you can't really stop it once it gets going. Like, it's just going to do that. Or to stop it is to attack. How I think the fight goes, Hierophant Green Requiem would push Dio to that point of near death that he got to before drinking Joseph's blood. But for the sake of the story, I think the move would be like, you know, Dio does defeat him. Or if like it's getting too bad that Dio does defeat him. Jotaro starting against, I guess, what is high voltage Dio, like just one of the superpower Dio. Now Jotaro has to fight that Dio. I think that's how that would go if it was like, you know, this is being written by Araki. But realistically speaking, this power would be enough to destroy you. Just completely. If your attacks are absolute and you use Emerald Slash and like it's going to hit him, like a 20-meter Emerald Slash is time stop his way out, but the attacks just keep on moving. Like, you gotta realize at the point he'd be super dead. Like, we saw him deflected and stuff. It's like, okay, cool. But when Star Platinum got hit with a freaking Emerald Splash by like accident, essentially for the first time ever, I was like, oh, okay, this is like a shotgun blast of stand energy. It was like a psychic shotgun blast. So imagine all these Emerald Splashes are coming for Dio, and he can't deflect them all, and he can't stop time. Like, you'd probably be dead. That's enough, and you wouldn't even have to worry about going to Jotaro. You know, that was not necessarily the best for the story, because it's like, oh yeah, we're working towards Jotaro. But you get how it was. Finally, Jotaro. Well, I think I've effectively gone over Jotaro Kujo's character in multiple other videos, but in the case of this darn beetle arrow, let's just really think about it as quick as possible. Throughout the main journeys of Jotaro Kujo, he has had the power to help others with his strength, but there was no way that this was going to sustain forever. Powerful men will eventually fall in all regards, no matter what side they stand on. Time has always won. It's undefeatable. It's like 100% win rate. Because, you know, even if time can't defeat the man, time will create the tools to do so. And he knew this when he gave that arrow fragment to his daughter, Jolene Kujo. Because the greatest thing someone can do when they have power is give power to others so that they can help themselves keep it all going. He gave her the power to do what she needs to do for herself and others, and I think that in the simplest way possible, that should be all he's capable of doing. Setting the scene, he has the beetle arrow on him. Pucci puts him in dire straits, maybe must choose between Jolene and Pucci. But that moment is where it clicks. Jotaro is pierced by the arrow. He moves Jolene out of the way. Pucci mocks him once again. He chose wrong. But once he goes to go attempt slashing Jotaro, he can't. And you pan over to Jolene, behind her, an entirely different figure. And that's when she says it. Star Platinum, the world. The greatest thing that Jotaro Kujo could have done in that moment that would reflect his character if he was pierced by the beetle arrow is to drop that weight and finally be free of the burden of strength. Pass the power on for those that want to fight, those that need to fight. Because he's already done so much, it's his time to let it be. The greatest power that Jotaro can give is an extension of his soul to his daughter. This new ability allows Jotaro to sacrifice a portion of his stand so that for an unallotted amount of time, Jolene Kujo would have 2 stands. Her own, being stone free, and then Star Platinum, the world. Its ability in this new mode being called Break Free. In this moment, Jotaro could allow himself some defense to try to block Pucci, but instead he gives all of the power he could to Jolene so that she could be the one. I think that falls in line with Jotaro's character. Just change, you know, don't use this as like me trying to change. I think the fact that the weight of this bloodline intertwined with fate and all is lifted in it. It essentially does a similar thing. I'd say better than Star Platinum Break Free is interesting to think about on what design to go with, but I think that starting with it's freer than before, you know, that's the idea. Next, I wanted to capitalize on the star is one of renewed hope, faith, inspiration. It's a wielder of a beautiful future. And I wanted to add more to that too because I found similar symbols of like that general idea, and adding additional arms to the stand would help connect it to the image of the Guanyu. That's my symbol. I'll be putting it in there. The multiple arms allowing him to help one and all is going to be a huge thing for Jotaro. And I'd like to also make the design a bit more. So it shouldn't be like limited to strictly masculine only in its design. So it should be able to change in general, or at least just look a certain amount of fluid so that, you know, it's applicable to all types. I also had the idea of adding a civic crown or something along those lines to the top of the stand as a symbol. I feel as though a civic crown, you know, being like a military decoration kind of makes me think, well, what do we do? Maybe something else that's a symbol piece and all that. One thing I also wanted to consider adding was 2 horns to its forehead, like the Ophiotaurus, and it might make them look like an Oni a bit. I'm gonna explain this. Now, I understand that for a lot of these, they do seem more group-centric in the context of the but compared to like someone like Full Experience Requiem, and I get that, but in the case of Giorno, he had been, you know, the main protagonist, and his goal is a him thing, and him being the star that shined the brightest, the Hall of Golden Wind, and him being a savior, being an allegory for savior-like things, and even like Jesus and all that, it made sense for the context of Golden Wind. The Stardust Crusaders are a group more than anything, and have some of the strongest ties possible to each other through their suffering. And this is where I want to add the final pieces of their names. See, I feel like because of this video and the video before this, I thought a lot more about Araki's design philosophy choices throughout JoJo's Bizarre Adventure.